So thank you very much to all the participants. I see now 168, which is already very good. And I will present myself. My name is Ana Estanqueiro, and I am the coordinator of TradeRES project. And I have the pleasure to host you today on this policy briefing on electricity market design for near 100% renewable power systems. This webinar is the webinar we prepared for you with the outcomes of our project and with the recommendations and the main conclusions that we obtained in this research project. I will present my colleagues that are speakers today, and we'll have Lawrence de Vries on the TradeRES background and purposes. On system adequacy, Lawrence and Ingrid Sanchez will present the results obtained by mainly TU Delft. We'll have Christoph Schimezek from DLR in Germany presenting the variable renewable support and investment de-risking. My colleague Antonio Couto from LNEG and Fernando Lazama from NISEP will present the outcomes in terms of short-term markets and ancillary services, following by the local markets and energy communities by Helixai from the Norwegian company Bitunitor and Goran Strabak from Imperial College. And on the European market perspective, profits, prices, and costs will have Silke Johan Deiter, and also with the contribution of Nina Elistov from VTT. And I will close this webinar with the main outcomes of Project TradeRES and the recommendations. Thank you very much for your presence and interest in our project and work. And with this, I pass the monitor to our first presenter, Lawrence. The monitor is yours.
Thank you. So welcome, everybody. Good that you're here at our closing conference. This project, this project started, well, we wrote the proposal in 2018, and then the approval took a while. So the kickoff was actually the week before lockdown, before COVID lockdown in early 2020. So we had our kickoff together, and then we went into online mode for quite a while before getting back together again. And not only did this affect how we work together, but the world is quite a different place since then. When we conceived of this project, there was strong belief that markets would trigger enough investments guided by the European ETS that would also guide investments to decarbonization. We found differently, but also in the meantime, I think there's much more acceptance of, let's say, more government control over the energy system. So the emphasis shifted a little bit from, let's say, analyzing whether government intervention was needed to how government should intervene. Also, when we started, we thought there would be a pretty large and liquid hydrogen market and system. That was the general assumption and policy goal. It's looking a lot more difficult. In this project, we didn't focus on the role of hydrogen, but I do think it became clear that we can't just assume it will be there, but we do need some kind of long-term storage. In this project, we assumed there would be hydrogen available for long-term storage. And also there's been a shift from, let's say, economic efficiency and decarbonization to also adequacy, gas imports dependence, etc., more strategic independence. So yeah, things have really changed around us. The fundamental assumption of the project is that we don't allow carbon emissions. So we do a lot of model runs of what would a market look like if you just don't allow carbon emissions. And you can have maybe some nuclear or not, and you can have different scenarios. Some cases we did allow some emissions, and we also simulated the actual transition from now to the future. I don't know if there's time for all of these today, but the basic idea is pretty much carbon-free system, and then how to organize it and how to make sure it's efficient operationally and how to get the right investments. Let's see. The main topics we'll address today are, first of all, long-term issues, and there are basically two big challenges: how to get enough investment in what we call VRE, variable renewable energy, so mainly solar and wind. They provide, let's say, the bulk of the primary renewable energy. And then the other long-term question is adequacy. How do we make sure that there's enough energy when the renewables are not sufficiently available? In addition, then, there's the short-term market operation. So we looked in general at how short-term markets should be organized, and how ancillary services should be organized. We also zoomed in on the role of local markets and energy communities. In our project, we used both optimization and agent-based models. We had a fairly intricate workflow. Optimization models were used for normative purpose, so to explore future scenarios, optimal energy mixes. And with agent-based models, we simulate the behavior of, let's say, agents like energy companies with bounded rationality. So they try to optimize their profits, but they don't know the future. And agent-based models were used to test the impacts of policies. How did they perform under, let's say, uncertainties and realistic assumptions about agents, let's say, knowledge of the future, etc. We also used model coupling, rather ambitious and complex. Advantage of model coupling are that you can, well, the main advantage is you can use or reuse existing models. But I have to say it was more complex than envisioned. For instance, if one model describes a supply function in mathematical terms and the other actually describes generators as objects, that already makes it very difficult to integrate these models. And then we also worked with operational and with investment models. We had quite a complex workflow with some feedback loops, using, like I said, both optimization models and agent-based models, linking models. You'll hear more about this in the next presentations. The idea was to, let's say, use the optimization models to set the scene, to set, let's say, targets or portfolios. They were also more suitable for large system analyses, interrelations between countries. Our agent-based models were narrower in scope because they were slower and more demanding in terms of computation time. So we typically use them for a single country, but then we expose them to mixes of policy instruments. And we made some iterations in this process, looking at model outcomes, then adjusting policy designs. So that's all for my introduction to the project. I'd like to give the word back to Anna.
Thank you very much. We will skip questions for now. This is the introduction to the project, and we will continue now with the first presentation with results from our project, and that will be from Lawrence as well, but mainly starting with Ingrid Sanchez on system adequacy. Ingrid, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Can you see my screen?
Very well.
Okay. Yes, thank you, Anna. And yeah, I'm happy to present the results that we made about system adequacy in almost 100% renewable power systems with, Lawrence, please. Yeah, in the current electricity markets, there are some issues that hinder investors from recovering their costs, thereby endangering their reliability. One of them is the so-called missing money problem, where basically refers that there are few scarcity prices due to price caps and a limited demand flexibility. Also, there's the so-called missing market problem, where there are low hedging levels due to risk aversion and a random curtailment. And there are every time more uncertainties like policy interventions, demand increase, fuel, CO2 prices, weather, and this will be increasingly important as the system is powered by renewables. So the first research question that we will present is if an energy-only market can enable resource adequacy in a high-res system with high flexibility. And to alleviate these problems, capacity mechanisms have been implemented across Europe. You see here the map of basically strategic reserve and capacity market have been widely implemented. So we researched these ones, but also researched a new mechanism that is capacity subscription, which intends to incentivize more demand-side response, which has been relatively low in the current mechanisms. So as Lawrence was explaining, we combine the forces of the models of partners. In this case, for this case study, we combined vRES with mLabPy. And vRES is developed by DLR, and we'll be also presenting results later. So vRES is a short-term market simulation model that simulates more flexibility types and also RES policies, but it didn't have investment decisions. So it was a good approach to combine it with mLabPy, which simulates investments and decommissioning decisions in an iterative way where investments are done as long as the net present value of expected an expected future market is higher than zero. And this allows to represent myopic investments, and in comparison to optimization models, there is no guaranteed equilibrium. So that allows us to represent capacity remuneration mechanisms. So we analyzed the weather stochasticity in the way that every dispatch, so we made a workflow of 40 weather years, and every dispatch was based on a different weather year, while the investment decisions were made in a representative weather year, which was the median RES production year. For this, we used the Spine Toolbox, which was developed by VTT, another partner for our consortium. And yeah, we studied a case study in Netherlands in an already decarbonized 2050 scenario. Well, in an energy-only market, we saw that it's not longer that price is set mostly by generators, but by the demand. And in our case, it was basically the electrolyzers setting the price. But analyzing the generation, we saw that in winter times, the generation can be low due to low solar production, while in the consumption side, the heat pumps, which were included in the static load here showed in purple, can be rather high. And this leads to the situation where there are high and volatile prices in winter time. But to answer the question, would companies invest to ensure reliability? We also tested two extreme scenarios where investments were done in a low, expecting low RES profiles or very high RES profiles. And basically, if investors would expect low RES production, then they would have to invest a lot. And that would allow them to decrease the shortages below a reliability standard in all years. But also that would make them have the market cost recovery below 100% in many years. And this lets us to continue the research with capacity mechanisms. But also we, just that weather uncertainty increased variability of prices by 10 and of cost recovery by 3. So in a capacity market, payments are awarded with the rating factors, which reflect each technology's actual contribution to reliability. And we observed in our simulation that there's a risk of overestimating these rating factors in the case that the RES and batteries are awarded. And here you see on the left that, well, in the red case, there were a very high shortage, although most years the shortages were very low. But then there's a risk of overestimating the regulating factors, and even already a stable scenario, the rating factors were only being stable after 15 years. In a capacity market also can be easily over or underdimensioned. And in general, well, implementing a capacity market lower the wholesale market costs, but summing up the costs of the capacity market, then these are turning into a similar costs to consumers as an energy-only market. With a strategic reserve, the lifetime of the power plants in the reserve is increased, which in our case was basically hydrogen turbines. But this led to high electricity volatility, basically because the demand side response was activated more before the plants in the reserve, and these were activated at a high price. So this caused very high and volatile prices. Indeed, more installed capacity, but still not enough to reduce this volatility. And analyzing the total cost of the reserve, so summing up the cost of paying the fixed cost of the plants in reserve and the revenues from the dispatch of the reserves at a high price, the cost of the reserve was zero in the median case. So there is not much higher costs, but there were higher and more volatile prices. Finally, we model capacity subscription, which is a mechanism where consumers subscribe to the capacity they need during scarcity events, and enabling reliability to become a private good. And in contrast to a centralized capacity market where the target demand is set centrally and also the parameters of the demand curve, then this changes to a situation where the demand curve is then formed by the willingness to pay of consumers. We model that consumers adapt their bids based on experience shortages, and generators make investment based on last year's CS price. And here we observe volatile and high capacity prices, and also some investment waves due to myopic bids from consumers and myopic investments, as there were high CS prices, then there were lots of investments. Then the CS price was decreasing, and consumers were keeping their willingness to pay low, and then there were so as if you see the dispatchable technology, which is hydrogen OCGT on the top, then this is showing the investment wave where due to the myopic behavior of consumers and generators. But implementing a clawback, this reduced the cost to consumers by €1 per megawatt hour. And yeah, Lawrence, if you want to say the conclusions.
Yeah, so it's my honor to summarize the output of this extensive amount of research. Very briefly, energy-only market doesn't deliver the needed investments. Two fundamental problems. One is in the long term, the variability between years. Every now and then there's a really unfavorable weather year, and you need more installed capacity than all the rest of the time. If the system is able to withstand that unfavorable year, the rest of the time it has overcapacity, and then the prices are too low to recover costs. Second problem, during the transition, necessarily the amount of renewable energy has to precede the electrification of industry, heating, and transport, for instance, because why would anyone in demand electrify if there's no green electricity available? So during the transition, there's also a mismatch. So we looked at three options. The strategic reserve doesn't come out well. It messes up the merit order of supply. Thereby, it triggers demand to self-curtail more than would be technically necessary, and that leads to price volatility. So we think a strategic reserve should be limited to maybe things like maintaining a natural gas plant during the transition as long as you need them, and then phase it out. Capacity market is the most effective solution that we modeled, but it's a bit of a blunt instrument. discourages demand elasticity by providing overcapacity at any time. There are risks of inefficiency in how it's parameterized. But the great advantage of a capacity market is that you can facilitate long-term contracts, 15-year contracts with generators, which may be necessary during the transition to deal with the very large uncertainties. Then we looked at the capacity subscription, which has the great advantage that the consumers decide their own level of subscriptions. Basically, it's a completely decentralized capacity market where consumers themselves buy capacity credits. And thereby they can make a trade-off between their costs of, let's say, being flexible during a shortage versus the cost of buying backup capacity. The problem with the capacity subscription is that you cannot expect consumers to sign up for more than 1-year contracts, at least not small and medium consumers. And in our model, that led to an investment cycle because during good years, there was not so much value to having extra capacity than the undercontracted. Then a bad year happened, high prices, shortages, then people would invest. And so the capacity subscription market itself was vulnerable to a cycle. So looking forward, what I think we should do is look at a combination, a capacity market that includes better incentives for consumers, not just demand-side management programs, but inherently strong incentives for consumers to behave flexibly, but at the same time provides long-term security to investors in generation capacity. In our model, a lot of the controllable backup capacity is hydrogen-based. A new dimension, of course, of the whole adequacy question is that you cannot just assume that hydrogen will be as available as natural gas used to be. So we need to think about how to ensure enough investment in hydrogen storage. Should that be a government task? Should it be part of the capacity remuneration mechanism, or should it be under a different policy instrument? But that's for follow-up research. Thank you for your attention. I think we have a few minutes of time for questions now.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Lawrence. Thank you very much, Ingrid, for the very interesting presentation. Yeah, we invite the people to go to Slido and put there your questions. We already have some of them, so we are going to revise some of the most interesting ones. So let's start with the first one. So how was the risk aversion of the agents during the investment process simulated in your experiments?
Ingrid, do you want to take that?
Well, actually, yeah, I would say we didn't really consider risk aversion. We just based, actually, they were just if pretty non-averse, because we just modeled them that they would invest according to a median vRES expectation. So yes, but itself, yeah, maybe you can complement Lawrence.
Yeah, well, there was one run where they looked at, let's say, a high renewable weather year. So the whole issue is the model results were dependent quite strongly on the weather year that the agents used for their investment analysis. And most of the time we used a kind of an average weather year. If the investors were risk averse, they could use, let's say, a high renewable weather year, meaning there's not much demand for a controllable capacity, and then indeed they would invest less. We didn't really model risk aversion explicitly, and already we saw underinvestment because the investors were myopic. They could only see the past and had limited information about the future. With more risk aversion, the results would be, let's say, more loss of load, stronger need for capacity remuneration mechanisms.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's pass to another question. How important is storage in a 100% renewable energy scenario? Which types of storage are needed and assume home, large scale, hydrogen for security and for supply? Can you comment on that?
Well, it's essential. However much solar and wind you push into the system, they will never be sufficient on their own. Also not complemented with current hydropower capacity in Europe, or even with a number of nuclear plants. So you need long-term storage. We only modeled batteries and hydrogen assuming there would be enough hydrogen storage. What kinds of storage are needed? Yeah, that's anything that can provide long-term storage at low cost, right? We didn't do a technology assessment.
Sure. Yeah, thank you very much. We still have time for more questions. Let's take advantage of that. Which type of capacity markets did come out as the most favorable? For example, centralized, decentralized, etc.
Well, we didn't investigate the combined, but yes. And yeah, I mean, for the 100% RES system, it was the centralized. But also we didn't model their demand side response in the supply side. How is it normally? Yeah, but conceptually, for the future, we think still like the capacity subscription, so that the centralized one has the possibility to, incentivize more demand side response from in the demand side of the, yes. But in like we showed in the results, there are some issues with it. That is that it can even make some investment waves if there's, and there has to be a lot of guidance from retailers for consumers to, don't have such a volatile behavior. And but this is for the research that to test a combined capacity market. This we didn't model.
Right. The issue is that a centralized capacity market is better on the wholesale side. It gives more security, or at least you can give more security to generators. Long-term contracts, more of a stable demand, but it doesn't activate the demand side adequately. And the available demand side response programs are are limited in scope. Capacity subscription is much better in incentives to the demand side, but only yields 1-year contracts and maybe is therefore not able to, let's say, avoid an investment cycle. It may not remove enough risk. So I think in the future, the question is how to combine the best of these two.
Thank you. One last question, I think that we still have time. How did you account for the RES uncertainties? Did you use different RES profiles in your experiments?
Yes, exactly. So every weather, we did a workflow of 40 weather years, where all the demand level and was set. So it was starting from 2050. And in this workflow, every realized profile was in a different weather year, but the investments were done in a median weather year. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think that we ran out of time for more questions, but we'll still have a final discussion at the end of the webinars in which we can revise some of the questions left by the audience. So thank you very much, Lauren. Thank you very much, Ingrid. And now let's pass to the next presentation. The next presentation will be given by Christoph from DLR, and it's going to be about vRES support and investment de-risking. So yeah, Christoph, the floor is yours. And sorry, just inviting the people to go to Slido and participate, also put in your questions, and we are going to revise at the end of the presentation. So thank you, Christoph. The floor is yours now.
You can see me and you can see the presentation?
Yes, perfect.
Yes, perfect. Cool. So hi, my name is Christoph, and together with my colleague Silke, we would like to talk about support instruments for variable renewable energy sources and how to de-risk investments. So the problem from our side is, from our view, is that cost optimization results are not necessarily feasible for all the actors. There are cannibalization effects and limited foresight, and these can cause missing money problems for some of the actors. So our research question that we asked was, do missing money constellations occur? Can vRES remuneration schemes solve these missing money problems? And how should these remuneration schemes be designed in order to be efficient and effective. And our main findings first. So what we found is that actually there are missing money situations that do occur in some scenarios and for certain technologies. They are interdependent with hydrogen prices and the level of flexibility, for example, from electrolysis. And investment risk are highest for small-scale PV and wind offshore power plants. Support instruments can de-risk such investments, and if chosen well, they can ensure that actors recover their costs, but they can also cause distortions on the electricity markets. They can induce higher or lower curtailment on the market side, or they can cause higher or lower market prices and therefore impact the costs of the system and to the end users. Now, how did we get these results? So we assessed 5 scenarios in total in this project. These slides also are valid for all the other presentations you will see. So we did a base scenario called S0, and this base scenario is kind of intermediate scenario with about 65% of variable renewable energy sources. And then we assessed, as Lawrence mentioned, 4 scenarios with about 100% renewable energy sources. And those were split into 4 groups. To the left, you see scenarios with 85% of variable renewable energy sources, and to the right, about 95% of variable renewable energy sources. The top scenarios reflect a high level of sector coupling and demand-side flexibility, whereas the bottom ones only have a moderate flexibility side. Now, our research approach was first, Silke did cost optimization on a European scale for investment and dispatch. And then we applied agent-based simulation for Germany. And for both case studies, we varied the support instruments and assessed the market performance under these support instruments. And the different support instruments we assessed, well, we start with an energy-only market, so without any support instrument. And then we add different types of support instruments that could be employed. For example, a basic contract for difference, or CFD, where an hourly spot price serves as a reference price. A market premium fixed, with a fixed market premium on top, added on top to the market revenues. A one-way contract for difference, where the market premium varies within the reference period, or can vary during the reference period, based on the market revenues and or the reference values from the market and the strike price. A two-way contracts for difference, which also means that you have to pay back if the reference value exceeds the strike price. A capacity premium, where you would get additional fundings for installed capacity, or funds for installed capacity, and kind of new instrument called financial CFD, where you would get a high capacity premium, but would also need to pay back all of the market revenues from a reference power plant. Okay. Some of these support instruments have influence on the bidding behavior and therefore can cause these market distortions that I mentioned earlier, and we will see how this happens. So here you see for the German case study, the scenario S1 results for cost recovery. And on the left, you see the energy-only market, none. And the solid bars here depict the market-based cost recovery for the different technologies. And as you can see, for small-scale PV in yellow and for wind offshore power plants, cost recovery is below 100%. So we have actually a missing money issue here. Adding the support instruments and the revenue streams from there with the different money streams represented by the hatched bars, you can see that support instruments can make fill this missing money problem and make the cost recovery happen. However, what you can also see is that two-way CFD can also impact the money stream directly. And you can see here that the market revenues from the market-based cost recovery in the case of wind onshore is extremely higher for that case, and that is because of curtailment. How does that happen? Well, if we look at curtailment, normally, or when you apply an energy-only market, what you see is that curtailment is bared by the wind offshore power plants. And that is because they have the highest marginal cost. So they have the highest chance of being curtailed on the market. The same applies for the capacity premium and the financial CFD, because here we have no impact on the bidding decisions, and therefore they have the same, they create the same kind of market result. However, if we have market distortions by policy instruments like market premium fixed or a one-way or two-way CFD, what we see is that curtailment changes. And in that case, PV and wind onshore is displaced or suffers more curtailment. And that is due to the different structure of the merit order in that case. If we compare all of the different scenarios in Germany, what you see is each scenario here has one color, and we look at the market-based cost recovery rates for the different technologies and in each block here. And what you see is that cost recovery rates vary strongly according to the scenario. If we look at the S2 scenario, for example, we have higher hydrogen prices, and what you can see is that cost recovery rates are highest for all technologies here. But if the hydrogen price is lower, like in the S4 scenario here in violet, what you see is that cost recovery rates go down, and even for wind offshore can drop below 100% in that case. They can drop even lower when we have more vRES active and less flexibility in the same time, and that causes higher lower market prices, basically due to higher temporal correlation of the feed-in. And you can also see that the two-way CFD always creates this kind of peak due to the changed curtailment behavior, and also that all of the differences among the scenarios are way greater than the differences among the different support instruments. So it's always important to assess more than one scenario when looking at market-based cost recovery rates. And now I would like to hand over to Silke.
Hello, everyone, also from my side. With the optimization model applied on the European scale, we not only provided the input data for the agent-based model, but we also conducted a CFD analysis, a separate one. So the difference here to the agent-based model is that we also accounted for the investment effects induced by different types of CFDs. And these investment effects come from the degree to which the different types of CFDs expose power plants to market prices. And we investigated these effects by first simulating a target scenario, which you can see here on the left, in terms of the capacity mix of wind onshore and electrolyzer capacities. And this target scenario is basically the scenario S3 that Christoph presented. But here we also distinguish two types of wind onshore power plants that are distinct in their capacity factor time series. And we chose one profile, which is characterized by a high market value, which is typically associated with a higher system friendliness and a higher correlation with load. And the other type of wind onshore profile is called wind onshore high FLH. So that's for full load hours. It mainly is characterized by having high full load hours and therefore low LCOE. And the CFD types that were mentioned by Christoph induce the following investment effects. So the basic CFD, which is with an hourly spot price as a reference price, is basically like a feed-in tariff. And therefore, it particularly incentivized this type with very high full load hours, which you can see that the dark gray bar is higher in this scenario. So there are more investments of this type. And the others include more market-based elements because they expose wind power plants to market prices, and therefore the high MV type is more invested in under this type of CFD. So this is kind of one additional insight to the case study conducted by Christoph. And in the optimization model, we could also see that this has an effect on other investments, particularly by electrolyzers. So could you show now the next graphic? Yeah. And similar to the results in a German case study, we saw a dispatch effect in terms of curtailment, which you can see in this graph, both absolute and relative curtailment. And we saw the same dispatch effects that were described by Christoph. So an increase in solar, but a decrease in wind onshore curtailment. But we saw an additional effect on curtailment under the financial CFD, precisely because of this change in composition of power plant types. Because we have more of this higher system-friendly power type, we could reduce curtailment. And this reduction of curtailment in all of these scenarios also led to the increase in investments in electrolyzers, which are typically correlated with wind production. So here, in addition to what we already learned from Christoph, is that the curtailment is also affected by new composition of wind power plant types, and this also affects electrolyzers. And then we can look at the next slide. These effects also affect prices, as you can see on the left, where you can see the price duration curve at the example of Denmark. And there you can see that we observe a small number of hours with negative prices under the one-way and the two-way CFD. And we can also see general shifts of, so that's kind of a vertical shift of prices, but we can also see a horizontal shift of technologies, and how exactly these plateaus can be explained. You will find out in our presentation on the European perspective, but here for now, the main message is these dispatch effects obviously also affect prices. And this has consequences for investors, and that can be seen in the next graph. Also at the example of Denmark, we investigated the market-based cost recovery in all scenarios, and then looked at how CFD payments play a role in cost recovery. And methodologically, in this case, we determined the strike prices that are underlying the CFD based on outcomes of the target scenario, which represents expectations of market actors. But then CFD payments were determined based on the outcomes of each scenario. And as you can see on the left, prices shifted. Therefore, the market-based cost recovery rates shifted, and also CFD payments rather led to an excess of cost recovery. But for the financial CFD, it was actually pretty close that cost recovery was reached. So it was just reached. And that's something that we see across different scenarios and also across different bidding zones. So here, the main message is the changes we saw in investment and dispatch, of course, affect prices, and therefore also market-based cost recovery and CFD payments are affected, with consequences for investors. Because in the end, a CFD also does not guarantee that you always achieve 100% cost recovery. You could end up achieving more or even less. Yes, that's, I think, from my side. So now we are very curious to hearing questions from you. And again, you can use Slido, and Fernando probably has some questions for us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Silke. Thank you very much, Christoph, for the very interesting presentation. So yeah, we have plenty of questions already in Slido, so let's revise the most voted ones. So let's start with this one. You comment a little bit about that at the end of your presentation, but how did you define the values of the CFDs, of the different CFDs that you... I am not sure about which values they refer, but I suppose there are track prices and reference prices. So can you comment a little bit about that?
Yes, maybe we could even share a backup slide, Christoph, if you really want to see all the formulas. Or yeah, that one. That would be for those who need the mathematical formulation. I mean, okay, so at least, yeah, I think Christoph actually explained. So basically, the difference between the different types of CFDs is mostly about the reference price. For the basic CFD, that's the hourly spot price. For the two-way CFD and one-way CFD, that's an average market value. In my case, that's yearly. In Christoph's case, I think it's monthly. And it's always from the same technology. So one technology in one country and then the average market value. And for the financial CFD, it's the average revenues per capacity. So it's similar to the two-way and one-way, but everything is per capacity. And then at least in my case, the strike prices were defined based on the assumption that the lifetime profit of a power plant is equal to 0. And then you end up with these formulas. So for the basic CFD, it's equal to the LCOE. For the two-way CFD and financial, we have a markup related to the average market performance. Yeah. And more details in our deliverable.
Thank you very much. Yeah, the next question, it's about the modeling. So how did you account for cross-border trading in your agent-based modeling?
Well, we did not do multi-market simulation here, so cross-border trading was not explicitly addressed, but implicitly. So we took the optimization results from the different markets and kind of simulated the imports and exports statically. So there was no impact of our own findings again to the cross-border trading.
Thank you. Yeah, one more question. What about PPAs as a complement to state administered support? Did you study them, and what is your take on them? You're mute, Sylvie.
Christoph, do you want to answer or shall I?
I didn't understand, to be honest.
It's about, what about PPAs?
PPAs.
Yeah.
So we didn't model PPAs explicitly.
Okay, and
but yeah,
what
I
is
would
your take on them? Yeah.
I would say in general, I would say we need both. I mean, ideally, the private market would just solve the issue of de-risking variable renewables. But I think because it's very important that we foster the expansion of variable renewables, we should complement PPAs by governmental instruments such as CFDs. And technically, PPAs can work exactly like a CFD, but they can, of course, also have other definitions. They can be pay-as-produced. They can follow a demand profile, a solar profile, whatever. So I think they're more individual than these ones. They can also have price floors or caps and not these fixed reference prices. So I think they might be a bit more flexible, but I think we need to complement them with governmental support schemes to be sure to reach the targets.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. One final question. I don't know if you can understand this one, but did you take the option value of dispatchable generation into account as a source of revenue? It is a hard question. Do you understand the question, or is it
The optional value of dispatchable
generation as a source of
generation.
revenue?
I believe in some way we took that when we levelized our CFDs with respect to the average market price. So in a way, I think that was our reference. If you remember, at a certain point, we needed a reference to settle our CFDs. But I would say that maybe the question is not sufficiently clear for us. If the author of the question wants to complement it and rephrase it, we'll be able to address it in the final discussion.
Exactly. That was about to say that now for this time, the time is it's over. So now we need to pass to the next presentation. But yeah, if the author of the question wants to join to the discussion in the final remarks, then we will give the floor to he or she, and she can comment about this. So thank you very much, Christoph and Silke. I give the word now to Professor Anna.
Thank you very much, Fernando. And the reason why Fernando gave me the floor is because I'm presenting himself. And the next presentation will be by my colleague from LNEG, Antonio Couto, and by Fernando Lezama, and they will present our outcomes in terms of short-term markets and ancillary services. Fernando and Antonio, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
So, yeah. So hello everyone and welcome to the presentation about short-term markets and ancillary services. I am Fernando Lezama from ISEP and I will be giving this talk alongside my colleague Antonio Couto from LNEG. Yeah, so here's an overview of the topics we'll cover, starting with the introduction to the MIVEL case study and the explored market design components. Next, we'll show the simulations and input data used in our experiments, to then follow with analysis of the results. And finally, we conclude with key remarks based on our findings. So here we introduce the central research question in our case study, which is how to make short-term markets more efficient to better integrate vRES fluctuations. And to address this question, the left side figure shows the methodological workflow implemented in our simulations. As you can see, in a first stage, we model the well-known day-ahead market, which handle energy transactions for the next 24 hours, and an innovative alternative to the day-ahead, call it period-ahead market, which we'll be introducing in the following slides. So we are not talking about that now. But then in an intermediary stage, a balancing market for secondary reserves is implemented, followed by an intraday continuous market. This allows participants to adjust their position closer to real time, refining trading results. And finally, we implement another balancing market for secondary and tertiary energy reserves and the imbalance settlement process. To analyze this stage, we use simulators like Machine and RESTRADE, which produce market performance indicators that helps evaluate market efficiency and vRES integration. Now, my colleague Antonio Couto will continue with the presentation.
Thank you. In this, one of the market design component that we dedicate more effort during the TradeRES project in terms of short-term markets was the day-ahead market. As we can see in the upper figure, the time frames of day-ahead market require power forecast with at least 12 to 36 hours in advance. And as we can see in the figure below, that refers to the power forecast errors in terms of time horizon, it's possible to see that errors tends to increase with the time horizon, which can lead to a substantial imbalance in day-ahead market for vRES players, which can jeopardize their profitability in electricity market environment. Therefore, what we investigated in this project was a new market design that is trading more close to real time and therefore can benefit from improved forecast. Next slide, please. This new market design is designated a period-ahead market, and in the figure below you can see the time frames associated with this market. Contrary to the traditional 24 hours period block, in day-ahead market, period-ahead market required a 6 hours period forecasts, and the market is cleared 4 times a day. Next slide, please. We also address the active participation of various players across different electricity market, including balancing market. And this active participation will be crucial in future RES-dominated power systems, since these technologies will also need to support the power system. two different market participation were studied in TradeRES. The first one consists on a passive participation of vRES players, where the power forecast for wind and solar PV is fully offered into the day-ahead or period market, and is represented by the solid green line in this figure. The second approach that we investigate was an active participation of vRES players, where the previous expected forecast is split as follows. 20% of power forecast is allocated for participating in the balancing market. That is represented by the dark green region in this figure, while the remaining 80% is bidding to the day-ahead market or period market. Next slide, please. In addition to these two the previous feature mentioned presented before, we also assess the impact of future nearly 100% renewable power system using the scenarios from TradeRES. And in the upper table, we can see the different set of simulations and their configurations that were performed in this case study. And the figure below, we can see the installed capacity associated with the different scenarios. And as expected, the future energy mix in Iberia will be dominated by solar PV technology and wind. On the other hand, the commission of conventional power plants such as coal in Spain or natural gas and other non-renewable technology are expected in both countries. Next, please. Here we can see some results regarding day-ahead and period-ahead market design for S0 scenario. This S0 scenario is a scenario based on the results from the 2013 National Energy and Climate Plan for both countries. From the results, we can see that compared to the day-ahead market, the period-ahead market show a lower average market price, as we can see in the left figure with the average market price, where we can see a slight reduction in the remuneration from these two markets in the period market for both countries. Nevertheless, on the other hand, what we can see from the period market, this market is more efficient since it enables to reduce the system cost for the space as well as the cost for society. This reduction is have more impact in Spain, and these results are associated with the improved forecast in period-ahead market that enables to rely less on the expensive conventional power plants. Next slide, please. The efficiency can also be seen in terms of cross-border trading, and here in this figure we can see the price difference and market splitting hours between Portugal and Spain. As we can see here in this figure, the period market contributes to minimize the market's distortion observed in the day-ahead market by reducing the number with market splitting hours from nearly 221 in day-ahead market to 63 hours in period market. And with this enables to have a highest price convergence between Portugal and Spain. Next slide, please. In this slide, we can see the results of the active participation. As we show here the results for levelized remuneration across the different markets analyzed in Nivel case study, and in the right figure, we can see the market-based recovery for wind and solar PV. vRES active participation enables to increase the market remuneration through a higher price in day-ahead market price, but most important, this active participation enables to increase the remuneration from intraday markets and balancing markets. As we can see in the levelized remuneration, when we in passive participation, we can, for instance, for a case of that is similar for all cases, but we can go from a situation in passive participation where we have to pay penalties to a situation where we can benefit from participating in this market in active participation. With this active participation, vRES players can recover almost in their investment cost, especially for the case of solar PV technology, as we can see in the right figure for the active participation. And in the case of the wind, this technology can increase the remuneration from the market and recover almost 90% of the investment cost. It should be, however, highlighted that the benefits associated with this active participation can lead to a slightly increase in overall system costs.
Okay, thank you, Antonio. Now continuing with the analysis, this slide presents the market performance focusing on the 4 scenarios of the project S1 to S4. And on the left side figure, we see the breakdown of average market prices in Portugal and Spain. And Spain, notice that the scenarios with high levels of demand side flexibility, such as S2 and S4, present lowest average prices. And this demonstrates the critical role of flexibility in stabilizing prices, especially in high-res system. In contrast, S1 and S3 scenarios results in significantly higher prices due to limited flexibility. And on the right side, we analyze the cost for society. And again, scenario S2 and S4 benefit from higher flexibility, having the lowest cost from Portugal and Spain. With the section of scenario S4 in which Spain has a slightly higher cost for society, but this should be related to the high investment needed to achieve the scenario S4, which is a radical vRES penetration. Now focusing on price difference and market splitting between Portugal and Spain under this 2050 scenario. Looking at the graph, we can see that the scenarios aligned in terms of demand flexibility and vRES penetration tend to be more stable, with near to zero market splitting events and price difference. With the scenarios aligned, we mean scenarios with low res and low flexibility, which is S1, or high res and high flexibility, which is S4. In contrast, the scenarios that are not aligned, for example, low res and high flexibility or high res and low flexibility, S2 and S3, present much more market splitting events and price difference. And these results highlight that aligned demand flexibility and vRES investment lead to a more integrated and stable Iberian market, at least from what we can see in the results. So here we have key observations from the numerical results obtained in this study. First, demand served by vRES is significant. Second, in the introduction of a period ahead market reduces balanced needs, penalties, and curtailments while promoting price harmonization. Third, the active participation of vRES, even with simple strategies as the one that we implemented, reduces imbalances and increases both the remuneration and market value. And lastly, cost for society and dispatch decreased significantly from 2030 to 2050. But as we saw from the results, this reduction is strongly linked to the complementarity between demand flexibility and vRES investment. So without this complementarity, the market struggles to get good results, as we can see. And to conclude, based on our results, we have the following notes or recommendation for short-term market design. First, about market splitting, we noticed that vRES power forecast errors contribute to virtual market splitting in the day-ahead market. Thus, the 6 ahead period ahead market that we propose significantly helps reducing this effect. Second, we believe that improving the day-ahead and intraday markets, introducing gate closer near to the clearing process, and prioritize vRES would enhance their role in these markets. Third, about power reserves, separate procurement of power reserves increase competitions and has a significant impact in lowering the prices. And four, in systems with nearly 100% renewable energy, reserve needs should be dynamically adjusted based on forecast and market conditions, improving flexibility and efficiency. So finally, while further work is necessary, for example, on the strategic bidding or the benefit analysis, these research demonstrate that flexible market design like the period ahead market, shorter gate closures, and improved intraday and balancing mechanism enhance market efficiency and unlock the full value of vRES in nearly 100% renewable systems. So thank you very much. Now looking forward to your questions. Thank you.
So thank you, Fernando and Antonio, for your nice presentation. My name is Ricardo Faye, and I will introduce the questions for this presentation. Moving to the slide, So, starting the questions. In this simulation, with average price around 30 euros per megawatt, do you consider support schemes for generators? Are they included in the system costs? Otherwise, it is difficult to frozen investments in generation.
Do you want to comment about that, Antonio?
Yeah, yes, I can add something. We didn't for this presentation. The results don't include any type of support mechanism in the results, and but because what we try to understand if there are changes in the market or through, for instance, period market or even through the active participation and the diversification of the revenue streams, if it was possible to recover most of the investment in the short-term markets was one of our focus in this case study, and therefore we didn't analyze in details the support mechanism.
Yeah, to complement about that, I think that that's an interesting topic that we should follow up with this study. As Antonio commented, our idea was to focus on the short-term market and just trying to make this analysis for 1 year of bids and see what happened in these markets. But the support instruments is something that for sure we need to analyze. This was also related to the agent-based modeling that was also previously mentioned by Christoph in the German case. In that case, that was the focus support instruments. So for us, was a different approach and was more focused on the balancing and day ahead interactions. So that's why also we didn't include that in our analysis.
Thank you, Fernando and Antonio. So continue to the next question. The more pronounced alteration proposed by the project applied to the short-term markets. What is the reason for that?
You want to comment about that, Antonio?
Thank you for that. These additional questions. Well, I believe that the most pronounced alteration will not the one that will have more impact for vRES players, but is the changes that we investigate here regarding the period market instead of the traditional day market. This, I believe that this is a change in the way that people see the market, because day market was designed in a period dominated by conventional power plants, and we need to start, because the project addresses future nearly 100% renewable power systems. We need to discuss more in detail and try to adapt the designs of the market to the interesting characteristics of renewables. And two main characteristics of renewable are the high variability and also the low predictability for a long-term horizon, as we show. So these are some of the most pronounced alteration, and also in terms of the balancing market, where we propose here some new designs that try to promote the participation of vRES players, like for instance the bidding is not to be necessary to be symmetrical, and things like that that we address in the project and are very important.
Yeah, yes, just to comment also upon that. Yeah, I think that this is related. It is not that this is the most key result from the project, but maybe it's something that is very related to the variability of vRES. The project has this component of near to 100 renewable power systems, and the truth, and this is my opinion, is that the system is not yet ready to handle this kind of system. So the short-term market will play a key role in handling all this variability and all the flexibility also that is appearing now. So that's why maybe it looks like this is one of the most important parts. I believe that all the different components studied in TradeRES that we are going to be showing today are also important, but this is of course a fundamental part of the project.
Thank you, Fernando. I think we have time for one more question. We have 1 minute and 30 seconds. What will be the impact of industrial consumers with low flexibility with implementations of PAM?
Well, it's not easy, but and thank you for the question, and I believe that part of their they probably need to change a little and try to have mechanisms that enable to adapt to these shorter time markets. But to be honest, this was not something that we address into too much details. I don't know if anyone wants to add something.
Yeah, no, it's not addressed in too much detail, but for sure they will have an impact. But there are some mechanisms already there, and I think that, for example, the talk about local markets would maybe develop a little bit about how to handle these small consumers that will be contributing to stress the system. So it's something that it will be linked, because at the end local markets will be linked into the system, so they will interact. So the period ahead market will have an impact as the day ahead market has now to the local markets, and this connection, I think that is something that deserves further attention in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both for the questions. So I think we can pass to the next question, to the next presentation.
Okay, and now taking a little bit again the control. Yeah, the next presentation will be about actually local markets and energy communities, and will be given by Helik and Goran Strabak. So Helik, the floor is yours.
Thank you for that, Fernando. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. So, yeah, thank you for joining this workshop. It's really great to see so many people here. My name is Helik Syse, and I work for the Norwegian company BitUniter, and we have been the task leader for the task concerning local markets and energy communities. We have a few points we want to go through with you today. First, we want to give you a brief overview of how we have approached this task of investigating the local markets. Then we talk a little bit about the features and methodologies employed. Then we'll present a few outcomes and high-level results. And then my colleague, Professor Goran Strabak from Imperial College, will present a case study about peer-to-peer trading. I'll mention briefly how we have investigated blockchain as a way to facilitate peer-to-peer trading. And then we'll open up for some questions and comments. So, starting with the local energy communities and markets, the way we approached this task was, first we had to review the existing regulations, schemes, and models that was out there. And we quickly saw that there is a lot of difference in regulation between countries, but also within regions in different countries. So it's, yeah, that means that it's quite complex to find generalizable results across markets and countries, because there is a lot of variations between schemes. But yeah, we're trying to find some still valid results. Also, for this task, we had to introduce some local market performance indicators, as the standard market performance indicators didn't cover all the aspects we wanted to investigate. And yeah, we introduced basically looking at the features and methodologies. We have 4 different types of models. We have optimization, agent-based modeling, game theoretical approaches, and normal simulation models. And we're looking at tariff optimization and cost reduction. We're also looking at investment in local renewable energy systems and self-consumption, demand response and flexibility, peer-to-peer and bilateral trading, wholesale market and day-ahead market participation, local resource aggregation and management, imbalance settlement and cost computation, and lastly, strategic bidding and auction mechanism. So using these models and the research we carried out, we have some kind of results, high-level results that we see across most of the models. And one of the key takeaways is that at least with the balanced local markets, we see an electricity cost reduction. We also see an enhanced system flexibility. We also see increased social welfare and also higher participation benefits in wholesale markets, cost minimization for prosumers, reduction in imbalanced costs, improved local carbon neutrality, and lastly, more effective market competition. So that's all quite positive results, but the way we see it, there's a lot of positives, especially if these markets are managed in a good way. So now I'll hand over to Professor Gerald Strawback from Imperial College that will present a specific case study that we have been looking at.
Thanks very much, Eric, and thank you, colleagues, for joining this. Very pleased just to give you a brief overview of the research carried out on Imperial College regarding this peer-to-peer energy trading, which is now kind of, is being getting on the agenda. And that's all to do with this transition to digitalized energy paradigm, which would open up the opportunities to actually include flexibility at the domestic level to support overall, the transition to cost-effective transition to low carbon future, because the flexibility has already been mentioned in this presentation is critically important for this. So this is just to kind of to see, you can see in the picture at the left-hand side, the kind of household prosumer 1, 2, 3, and there is between them there is a links so that we can exchange, kind of also the demand flexibility, also storage. If you go to electric vehicles and so forth, you can use them to support, to provide support in different households and so forth. And also there's a PV production, because that's also something getting also developments of to have also local generation, which is also very important. And in this context, we have analyzed in here how this peer-to-peer energy trading would reduce the peaks, and also you can see here reduce the dependency on on retailers and energy companies, and also kind of the overall reduce the energy system costs, and also demonstrating that it will also potentially be used to displace or avoid reinforcements of local distribution networks, which is also where these local resources are going to play a critical role, given that, as you know, that decarbonization involves, for example, significant amount of heat sector, transport sector to start with electric vehicles and so forth, but also in Northern Europe there is also significant interest in using heat pumps and so forth, which is going to also increase massively demand, and that's where this also peer-to-peer trading is going to play a major role. You go to next one. Thank you. So this is just to show you this what was carried out in here, which is the kind of local retail, can you see the machine learning approach, which is also being developed for the first time in here, because we look at in here 250 households, and there is also 200, you can see 200 PV panels and 150 storage units. And now to control that effectively, this is also something which we have developed also to look at how this artificial intelligence can be used to make that work. On the left hand side, you can see this kind of just the local demand with the a picture with this, the red one, just 250 profiles, and also there is this where the average is in the black, and also the on the right hand side is again kind of 200 PV panels you can see producing in the middle of the day, and also this one is a kind of the average value. And what is going on in here and the left bottom side is looking into just a day, example day, which looks into this kind of profiles. And the red one is this reinforcement learning. This is a peer-to-peer trading, while the black one is kind of no flexibility. And the blue one is not easy to see differences, but it's to do with this, there's flexibility, but it's not properly co-optimized in terms of storage and electric vehicles and so forth. So you can see in here, just to highlight quickly, is that, that there is peak demand reduction in the evening. You can see at 20 is go nearly to zero. The red one can be very negative. And also there is a more absorption of the solar panels in solar power during the midday conditions, and which is also relevant because that's also which flexibility can make better use of these resources, and overall is showing that there will be overall reduction in system operation costs if we do that, if we do in a coordinated fashion. So the next one. Yeah, this is just to illustrate how this market, retail and local energy markets are interacting. So you can see this picture on the left-hand side is the kind of wholesale market. Then there is a retail market, and at the bottom is the consumers and prosumers, which is to do with this, peer-to-peer trading. And so that you can see that we can kind of try to co-optimize that. And this is something which is being analyzed in here as well to see how that can be done. And this is also that, regarding the market operators, the centralized market, can provide these clearing algorithms. And also in the middle side, we need to also make sure the retail is also, making proper approaches to this. And also at the end use is where this wholesale retail market interaction is, including the peer-to-peer trading interaction between different households. And that's also where the kind of the energy, but also the costs are, critically important. We've got this three-level optimization problem which does that. So the next one is to show you the example of this assessment over one day in terms of how these community responses are. And we've got in here two cases. One is to do with, you can see in here, one is kind of, dash gray, kind of say, a line, which is a kind of, say black, and the other one is red. And the black one it says power to grid, which means that, consumers just buy energy and there is no proper coordination of the demand and supply. And that local energy market, you can see in here, reduces dependency of end consumers on upstream level. So you can see that it was reduced in here, which means that the demand is more flexible. You can reduce it, and also at the that means also that in this standard approach with peer-to-grid, that the consumers will need to buy electricity from the retailers, and also all their production, if they've got the solar panels, will be sold to the retailers. But if we've got this local energy market with the peer-to-peer trading, then we can see that demand is can be locally balanced, is reduced. You can also see that the amount, for example, this is the reference one with the power to grid, which is just to say how much energy would be actually exported in the business usual world. But if we've got a peer-to-peer trading, we can then make use of those resources and making sure that the best use of the local resources is done, and only relatively smaller amount would be exported if it's not used by the local energy market, because obviously in here there is in broad terms there is too much production of solar panels, which is, we can see the red is kind of also but it's much less than if you look at this dash gray line. So we go to next one, and this one is showing you can see on the y-axis are the prices during the day, and in here this is that this is what the implications would be if we've got a local energy market. So they will be trading internally and balancing the demand and supply more strongly. And that what you can see in here, that this local pricing is somewhere between. At the top, we've got a retail energy pricing, and at the bottom is the sell prices. If you are exporting energy from the local district level, what the prices would be. And we can then see in here that if we've got this local energy market operating with peer-to-peer, it reduces the market power of retailers, both in terms of selling and buying electricity, which is important. You can see that in that context that the retailers, you can see in here also there are some figures in terms of what are the profits, and we can demonstrate that retailers are kind of losing its profit because of the less business case from the end consumer approach objectives, and low demand, you can see increases, and that's again to do that the local energy market can also make better use of that, and that would also increase. You can see in terms of the benefits that the local demand is got in terms of what the benefits are. You can see doubled, is assuming the demand is making better use of resources at the lower costs, and also the generation profits is also increased because we can we can actually, rather than selling to the retailers at a very low price, it actually can be used properly in the district level and make sure that we are using this in a most cost-effective way. And that is something which is being analyzed in here, showing that also this transition to this peer-to-peer and local energy markets would potentially have a very significant impact. That was one of the aspects of the TradeRES project to put that together. Thank you. Any questions would be very much appreciated.
Heilig, I need to ask you to be very fast.
Okay, I see we're over time, so quickly round up. So the last point I want to mention, I'm not going to go into detail. You have the links here, but we also carried out a demonstration of how a blockchain-based system could be set up. So there was a question regarding if Göran's Imperial College work is linked to blockchain. It's not, but we have a separate work where we have set up a platform that uses historical data, and we use the Ethereum blockchain using smart contracts to facilitate peer-to-peer trading. So if anyone is interested in looking more into that, you can find the dashboard and the GitHub repository where you can learn more about how a blockchain-based peer-to-peer system can be set up. So with that, I'll thank everyone for listening to us, and now we will open up for questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Heilig. Thank you very much, Göran. We are still on schedule, but not too much time for questions. But let's just go for the first question, and actually, it's related to the last slide. How the peer-to-peer trading presented by Professor Göran is performed? Is it based on blockchain?
Göran, do you want to answer? I guess I can answer that.
Maybe you can answer to start with, but what we have done in here is this artificial intelligence, machine learning approach used, because we are going to have, if we go to this peer-to-peer trading, we are going to have hundreds and thousands of millions of different resources for control, and that's where this artificial intelligence based machine learning based concept can actually be used to support the trading. That's what we have done in here.
Yeah, and I guess I can follow up with a quick comment. So from BitUnited side, we have been developing this blockchain-based platform, but with this platform, we're not carrying out any modeling and simulation using blockchain. So blockchain is more, you can look at it as the trading platform that is totally decentralized, because instead of having a centralized operator, the blockchain in itself is the operator. And it doesn't necessarily change the peer-to-peer trading mechanism. It just facilitates decentralized open transactions is generally what the research shows, and also what we are showing with this demonstration.
Thank you very much, Helik. We will leave the rest of the question for the end of the session because now we need to pass to the next presentation. Thank you very much, Goran and Helik. So the next presentation, it's about the European market perspective, prices, profits, and cost, and it will be given by Silke and Helisto. So Silke and Helisto, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and hello again. Can you see my screen?
Yes, perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. The European optimization model was already mentioned in the talk on the CFDs, and now me and Nina Helistö from VTT want to present more on the insights from this European perspective and how prices are formed in future European markets and what that means for different actors and their profits and costs. First, I would like to give you a very brief and rough overview of the model. This is a very simplified representation of our sector-coupled energy system optimization model. And at the core of our model is, of course, a power system, which we interpret as a power market. And we have different electricity supply technologies available in this power market. All of them are carbon-free by assumption. And the main share is enforced to be supplied by variable renewables, so solar and wind power and also hydropower. But we also allow for a certain share of carbon-free thermal power plants to supply electricity. These are hydrogen gas turbines, biofuel turbines, amongst others. We have different storage technologies in the model, mainly battery and also hydro storage. And most importantly, we cover, besides conventional electricity, we cover different demand-side sectors. We explicitly model flexible electric vehicle demand, flexible heat pump demand, and we also allow for investments in electrolyzers. And these electrolyzers are used to cover a substantial amount of hydrogen demand by the industry. And alternatively to providing this hydrogen demand by electrolyzers, it can be covered by imports for a fixed price from outside of the European Union. And the European Union is also the scope of the model. Here you can see the geographical scope. And we also assume a power transmission grid and a hydrogen transmission grid to be existent in the model. And we have one node per country or aggregates of countries which are interpreted as bidding zones. So this is roughly the model that we applied and that we developed also throughout this consortium using all the data insights and modeling efforts of different partners. And actually the whole model is also available open source. The energy system model optimization framework is called Backbone and was developed by VTT. And we used a workflow manager that is called Spine Toolbox, and everything is available under our TradeRES GitHub. And then we also have a Zenodo published database for all the scenario data. So if you're into modeling, feel free to try out our model and optimize the scenarios yourselves. But before you do that, I would like to also present you some results of the model. Of course, we optimize these scenarios, which we already heard of, S1 to S4 for the European case. But we also optimize some scenarios that isolate the effect of each scenario variation to capture each effect. And you can see here the resulting capacities from 4 scenarios. One is a base scenario that resembles the S3 scenario that you heard of before. And it's characterized by a high share of variable renewables, larger than 95%. Flexibility is assumed to be almost non-existent, and we have a very low hydrogen import price. And then we vary this by, in one scenario, we allow for fully flexible electric vehicles and heat pumps. In another scenario, we increase the hydrogen import price, and in another scenario, we decrease the share of variable renewables to 85%. And then here we can see the isolated effect of each of these variations. And here the main message is that the capacities are largely driven by the H2 import price and the flexibility assumptions. So flexibility on both the demand side, but also on the supply side, if we allow for more thermal power plants, obviously decreases curtailment and therefore the need for capacities and also the need for storage capacities that we need in this base scenario where we don't have the flexibility of the thermal supply or the demand. So here the capacities are substantially lower, and the highest capacities can be seen in the scenario with a high hydrogen price, and that's because of the high consumption by electrolyzers. So here you can see the levels of electricity consumption by each sector. By assumption, they are the same for all the demand side sectors. Of course, storage demand changes a bit, and we see a huge variation in electrolyzer investments and consumptions, because if the hydrogen import price increases, so it is expensive to import hydrogen from outside Europe, then it is very profitable or very efficient to produce hydrogen in Europe, and we see a lot of hydrogen electrolyzer investments, which increase consumption and electricity generation capacities. But yeah, the main purpose of the study is to analyze how prices are formed in future markets and how they're distributed. So before I get into detail of the distribution of prices and who is setting the price the most, let me explain to you how price formation works according to this model in future markets at the example of the Italian price duration curve in the flex scenario. So here in the middle, you can see the utilization rate of the installed electrolyzers. And on the bottom, you can see the utilization rate of variable renewables and thermal power. And here you can see, I hope it can be seen, that here not the full available capacity of variable renewables is used. That means essentially there's curtailment in these hours. And what does this mean? That means they are setting the price because actually they have excess capacity to be offered. But here they are also the main supplier of electricity. However, the price increases. And that's because here there are some electrolyzers that actually have capacity and they could buy more electricity, but there's no cheap variable renewable electricity left. And therefore, they are actually becoming the price setter at a level of around 30 euro in this case. And this level is determined by the opportunity costs of hydrogen consumption that are determined by the import price of 45 euro. And by the efficiency of electrolyzers, which is 70%. So 70% times 45 euro are 31 euro. And therefore, this is the electricity price up to which it is cheaper to buy electricity and transform it to hydrogen than importing it from outside Europe. And this is why we see this price plateau. Then here in this area, it's the traditional thermal power plants who are setting the price. And then here again, the demand side plays a role. And I have not mentioned before, but the heat pumps in our model can be replaced by fuel boilers in case of hours of high electricity prices. And this is what's happening here. And this is why they are setting the price. So what does this mean for the distribution of electricity prices? I mean, how does this look like all over Europe and who's setting the price the most often? In the base scenario, this is the picture that you can see when you look at the distribution. So this is a histogram that shows you the relative frequency of variable renewables setting the price and other technologies setting the price. And it's cut off at 130 euro because there are just very few observations above this level. And you can see electrolyzers are actually the main price setting technology across Europe in this base scenario. And this is pretty much robust across scenarios. Only if we have a higher share of thermal power, then they play a bit smaller role than thermal power plants themselves. But the most important message here is that the cross-sectoral demand becomes price setting in future markets, and therefore worries that we might see a lot of hours where variable renewables are setting the price at a level of zero, are not justified in the present of this cross-sectoral demand. In terms of European electricity prices, so here you can see the annual volume-weighted average price by scenario, by country, and then here the European mean. I think here the main message is that depending on these scenario assumptions, which represent different, uncertain development, we see very different price levels. So in each country, average prices are varying at least 30 euro per megawatt hour. So this means that from today's perspective, future price levels are very uncertain. And we can see that flexibility decreases price levels, particularly because they decrease the number of hours with scarcity prices. Interestingly, although the hydrogen price is a lot higher in this scenario, the increase in the average price is not that high as one might expect because of the expansion of variable renewables. And the most expensive prices result in a scenario with a high share of thermal power. And in general, what we can also see from this picture is that it seems that flexibility, either on the demand side or on the electrolyzer side, kind of smoothes prices across Europe. Finally, I would like to show what this means for different market actors. Here you can see the market-based cost recovery rate in the 4 scenarios of electrolyzers, solar and wind onshore power plants, and 1 dot represents 1 bidding zone. And here, in terms of solar and wind onshore, I think the main message is that they can be profitable in these scenarios with higher prices. So in contrast to common belief, they might actually become profitable even in a market that is dominated by variable renewables. However, these cost recovery rates are varying, so they are exposed to high risk. For electrolyzers, the picture is a little bit more robust as it is changing a bit less and seems to be less dependent on electricity prices. Particularly, that's because of their role in setting electricity prices themselves. What does this mean for different consumer groups? So here in blue, you can see the conventional electricity consumers. Pink is heat, orange is electrified transport, and turquoise is hydrogen. And in the flex scenario, the orange and the pink ones are flexible, and in the others, they're static. And here, the main message is actually that these blue dots are varying in a similar manner like these yellow and gray dots. So there seems to be maybe common interest. There seems to be a similar exposure to price risks. Whereas flexible consumers, if they become flexible, they can decrease their average costs of final energy consumption. So they are less exposed to these price risks. Finally, hydrogen consumers, well, if most of the hydrogen is imported, the price is very boring and the same all over Europe. But in case of a higher hydrogen price, we see higher variations among countries. And if this price would be varied more, then we would also see different levels. So these were a lot of dots and numbers. Let me sum up. Variable renewables can be profitable in future markets, yet they are exposed to high revenue risks. These risks could be addressed by instruments such as CFDs that we investigated already previously within this workshop. And these can also address the consumer risks that we saw here. Okay, so this is from my side, and now I would like to hand over to my colleague Nina with some further results.
Thank you, Silke. So I'm happy to complement the pan-European perspective with some additional findings from a study where we analyzed the impact of wind power WACC, so the weighted average cost of capital. And what we did in practice was that we varied the WACC of wind power from 3% to 11%, while keeping all other parameters in this pan-European energy system model the same. And what we noticed when decreasing the WACC from 11 to 3% is that investments in wind power, of course, increased. And they are these turquoise blocks in this figure on the left-hand side. But we also noticed that solar, battery, and electrolyzer investments decreased, and these are the yellow, orange, and red and green blocks in the figure. On the other hand, if we look at the production figure on the right-hand side, we see that decreasing wind power WACC increased the total electricity production, and of course, in particular, the wind power production. But what we also see is that electricity consumption by electrolyzers actually increased, meaning that domestic hydrogen production in Europe also increased. And next slide, please. And we also noticed quite significant impacts on system costs and fuel imports. So when we decreased the WACC of wind power from 11 to 3%, the annual system costs decreased by as much as 27%, which is 84 billion euros in absolute terms. And what is interesting is that over half of these cost savings were actually from reductions in hydrogen imports from outside Europe. And what we can conclude from this study is that lower WACC for renewables, at least for wind power in this case, can dramatically reduce the total system costs and also reduce reliance on fuel imports. And overall, this means that society has much to gain by keeping financing costs low through risk management mechanisms. Thank you. And next slide, please. So yeah, with that, I hand over to Fernando.
Yeah, thank you very much, Nina, and thank you very much, Silke, for a very nice presentation. We have time for a couple of questions, maybe. So yeah, let's go to that. First question, did you take into account the different generation profiles of solar PV and wind in each country? For example, solar PV in southern Germany generates more electricity compared to the northern regions. Did you comment about that?
Yeah, I can comment about that. I think Nina could as well, but doesn't matter. Unfortunately not. We used one profile per country, which is of course a limitation. But yeah, I mean, per bidding zone, we differentiate, of course, but yeah, I guess future improvements of the model should differentiate at least these large countries like Germany. But then again, also the purpose of the model is not really to project investments or investment levels, but price dynamics. But yeah, then again, also the profiles will play a role. So should be updated in the future.
Thank you. One more question. Are the results solely based on an optimization model? And if yes, what would be the impact if agent-based models were used?
Yes, these are solely based on optimization model runs. I think it's difficult to say what the results would be if we had run them with an agent-based model. The issue was that we had difficulties in actually finding an agent-based model which would be able to consider different regions in one model and the cross-border transmissions, and also which would have been able to consider several sector coupling options at the same time. Do you want to add something, Silke?
Yeah, and maybe I can add to that. I mean, if we look back at the this slide here, I mean, I guess using an agent-based model that is an investment model like the one we saw for the Dutch case, we would have not seen investments that are not profitable. But here this results from several constraints that we have and also a sampling method. So I think this would be different in terms of investments. And then also one thing that is driven by optimization here is that electrolyzers cost recovery is more stable than that of wind and solar. And that has a relation with their role in price setting, but also because there's no constraint or no target on electrolyzers here. So it's more close to the optimum than that of solar and wind. So yeah, some things, of course, are model driven.
Yeah, thank you very much. Maybe good for the discussion following the presentation. So thank you very much. We are still on schedule, so let's pass to the next presentation. And the next presentation, I invite Professor Anna Stanqueiro to give the TradeRES outcomes and recommendations. So, Professor Anna, the floor is yours. You are still muted, Professor.
And I will share my screen and now put on presenter mode. Do you see presenter mode?
We are still looking at the notes.
Still note?
Yeah, I mean, it's presented, but we are looking at the notes, not at the presentation.
Okay, so in that case, I need to go back. I'm sorry. It seems that my sharing is not working that well. Do you see it in presentation? No.
The same. Yeah,
The
the
same.
same.
There's something really wrong with my presentation. I'll try to do it again. It is in presentation mode. And now I'll try to share from here. Okay, I think it will be okay now. Is it?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Sorry,
Go
something
ahead.
wrong with the two monitors I have. So Fernando, thank you very much. And besides Fernando, all the speakers that precede me in this webinar. And what I'm doing now here is a wrap up of all the results that were presented today and obtained within the project. Many of them were not, we were not able to present them today. And starting with this overview of our outcomes of TradeRES project, I will highlight the main results in terms of system adequacy and security of supply, as well as de-risking of variable renewables in investments and their need eventual for support mechanisms. So first of all, we looked, as you probably recall, we looked at capacity remuneration mechanisms, and the study that was mainly applied to the Dutch market concluded that these capacity mechanisms are needed during and after the energy transition. And moreover, those capacity mechanisms increase the robustness of the power system by promoting investment in dispatchable technologies. And at the same time, they have a neglectable, very small impact on system costs. One of the outcomes that we take from this study, although TradeRES didn't specifically study capacity mechanisms applied to energy storage technologies, is, of course, this is a project that is more of a beginning of study of electricity markets with large shares of renewables than the end study. And we should address how capacity mechanisms could and should eventually be applied to energy storage technologies. Following that, we studied the de-risking of vRES investments and also what support schemes should be better and should be applied. And one of the conclusions that we found in this project, and I should highlight the fact that In the not middle, but 1/3 of this project, we had a big impact in terms of electricity markets, and we had to deal with that impact, and also we had information coming from the effects of that turmoil in the electricity markets, and one of the subjects was addressed was the contracts for differences, or in another word, what would be the best remuneration mechanisms for variable renewables. It came out that CFDs are almost universally recognized as a very good tool. They are being presented by investors in variable renewables as the tool that should be used. Therefore, it was a logic conclusion of the project to study all the possible variants and also to highlight the possible risks and advantages of each configuration of CFDs, because there are many. One of the conclusions that was presented here was that production-dependent CFD schemes, for typically type 1 and 2 way CFDs, they do affect directly vRES curtailment, and eventually we need to be careful, because they, if they are profitable investments, if they are in an environment, that makes them profitable, they may lead to oversupport. So they need to be carefully looked at. One of the possible solutions to that drawback of those CFDs may be the use of financial CFDs, which are a bit more recent and elaborate. But in that case, the financial CFDs may pose risks to the investors that should be further investigated and should be taken quite carefully. Another highlight that our deep research on these remuneration mechanisms obtained was that these results are very strongly dependent on the approach of the scenarization of the case studies. Therefore, we should always be careful our results with the scenario simulated, and also to the inputs and constraints of the models and the input data. For instance, in terms of hydrogen price and electrolysis simulation, what we may conclude is that we should take the research further away and also simulate or descriptions of storage units that are market competitive, which in most of the case studies we didn't address here. In terms of market design components, both in wholesale markets, but in retail and markets and ancillary system services, it was referred by a question that the period ahead market, or at least the short-term markets, were the ones where there was a most profound change. Well, that's probably a reason for that, because the short-term markets are the ones that are more deeply affected by the very high time dependency of variable renewables. And it was the focus of this project to address the impact of variable renewables on markets. So it's not surprising that our action somehow was strong in those markets that are most effective. This idea of simulating period ahead markets rather than day ahead was in principle for being relatively simple in terms of adaptation to an already existing design of markets, and also because if in an ideal world, if we want to benefit variable renewables, we should try to negotiate in real time. Therefore, what we achieved in these simulations and studies, first of all, and that is very important, is in short-term scenarios, all TradeRES achieved very high annual shares, 100% or close to 100%. So when we reach scenarios with designs close to 2050 European plans, we can say that we have zero CO2 emissions. One of the things that we were aware is future power systems, if they are near 100% renewables, they will be almost fully weather dependent. Therefore, we tested and implemented conditions to improve the accuracy of the variable renewables power forecasts. And although we already obtained very good results with new forecast methods that we implemented in this project, we reinforce this fact that further methodologies that improve the accuracy must be tested and promoted. And another thing that we strongly recommend, and we also started to do that with our period ahead market design, is that the electricity market timings of accepting bids and closing those offers, they need to be synchronized with the refreshment of the meteorological data. Meaning that we need to have in the near future a close relation between what is the weather forecast and the operation of electricity markets. As I mentioned, period ahead market we tested and implemented with quite good results. And one of the things that we also tested in terms of short-term markets is that it is desirable to have a more variable renewables friendly clearing mechanisms for the intraday markets. Additionally, we implemented an active strategic participation of variable renewables in different markets with very good results, as for instance, we can see here in terms of the retail markets. If you look at this graphic on the right that my colleague Antonio Couto already presented, we have on the left the participation in terms of classic participation of variable renewables, on the left in green wind, on the right in orange solar, and this is the left bar is the passive participation of renewables, in which they participate in day ahead, and they have the penalties for imbalances. And this new bar on the right reflects is not strategic bidding, but is strategic participation of shares of energy forecast in different markets. And as you see, not only we do not lose money, you don't have penalties on the right bars, but we have an increase of profits by promoting by that active participation in different markets. So our outcomes in terms of the representation and simulation of ancillary system service is that dispatch costs decrease significantly from 2030 to 2050. It is desirable that the participation of aggregated smaller players is promoted and further expanded. We should adapt ancillary services for enabling full participation of variable renewable players. A few countries in Europe already allow it, for instance, Spain. We don't in Portugal, that a case that we simulated, but what should be announced is variable renewables have extremely favorable conditions for this participation, and also by allowing them to participate, we enable the reduction of their imbalances and also of system costs at the same time that we increase their market value. A conclusion that we can put forward based on our simulations in TradeRES, and this conclusion is not a new one, because there were research projects 10-15 years ago that tried to implement this form of procurement of secondary reserve that I say here should be dynamic and associated to variable renewable forecasts. We strongly support that, but 15 years ago, those forecasts were not good enough. Nowadays, we have tools and means to support this dynamic procurement of reserves, and this theme should be revisited for variable renewables. And we also highlight the fact that imbalance settlement mechanisms that fairly reflect true costs of these services should be implemented, because not in all electricity markets we see that occurs. Other market design that I put sort of between common components, so aspects that affect the trading in electricity markets that we addressed, is transmission networks and cross-border trading, and also the distribution networks and sector coupling. So in terms of course cross-border trading and transmission networks, we applied grid-enhanced technologies. Specifically, we modeled dynamic line rating in the interconnection between the two control zones of MIBEL market, Portugal and Spain, and that led to a strong reduction in market splitting occurrences, and of course also a convergence of prices between the two countries. In terms of sector coupling, we can point out that the coordinated design for different vectors, as well as the regulation, should be common across coupled infrastructures. In terms of distribution networks and local markets, both distribution system operators and local energy communities were found to play a critical role in increasing decentralized variable generation. And also they may play a very significant role in terms of local energy balance that always enhances efficiency and resilience of the networks. From the European perspective and the case study that applied it, we can grab two very important informations. One of them is an emergence of a demand side merit order. This is very associated with the change of flexibility from the production side to the consumption side, and also that the investors in variable renewables and the inflexible consumers are the most exposed to the price risks in these markets. So the synthesis of TradeRES recommendations are, in terms of wholesale market, shorter leader times, implementation of rolling time horizon market clearing process, and addition of high resolution near-term forecast markets as a product to facilitate time arbitrage by storage units and flexible demand. In terms of retail market design, the real-time pricing should be implemented in the entire market and also for small consumers and prosumers. Of course, that is difficult for small and domestic consumers, but an option for contracts that allow controllable, affordable power to protect consumers against price spikes. If that exists, it would enhance that measure to be implemented. For the ancillary services, that's one of the areas that we consider and recommend to be fully reformed in order to allow new resources such as variable renewables, storage, and demand-side management or response to replace the actual role of dispatchable power plants in near 100% renewable power systems. These reforms of the markets should be designed to take the physical properties of variable renewables into account and operate with those characteristics. Finally, in terms of de-risking variable renewables, the need for support schemes that were studied in detail, applying contracts for differences, those are needed during and after the transition. We recommend the most careful approach in the design of the contracts for differences. First, because they tend to be applied for long terms, and at least the recovery of the investment, and they not only have very different behaviors, but they may influence the operation of the market itself. For system adequacy, we support and reaffirm that capacity remuneration mechanisms are strongly needed, both during and after the energy transition. And we also recommend that it should be researched, the application of these mechanisms, not only for energy generation capacity, but also for energy storage capacity. Why? Because they have a negligible impact on system costs, and they strongly increase the system robustness by promoting the investment in dispatchable units. Finally, in terms of sector coupling, transmission networks, and cross-border trade, all energy vectors should be treated equally with respect to CO2 emissions and other externalities. Grid-enhanced techniques, or we tested dynamic line rating is one of the most simple to apply, should be applied. They have low cost with respect to all other measures and maximize the trading capabilities. Intraday and balancing markets should be coupled across borders. That's a recommendation that is being put forward for many years. And finally, the capacity mechanism should allow resources from neighboring markets to be used to provide capacity as well. And this closes my wrap-up of recommendations and outcomes of TradeRES projects. And I would now open the floor, the monitors, to more questions and comments that we can put through Slido. And if there is any question that the audience feels that needs to be put forward in real voice, we are also open to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Anna. Yes, so now we have the time allocated for discussion and final remarks. For this activity, we ask the audience to raise their hands. You can use the button react and then raise hands, and then we will give you the floor to make questions to the speakers today. Thank you to all the speakers also for the very nice presentations. And also please go now to, if you can go now to Slido and vote in, we have a poll there just to rate our webinar. We hope that you enjoy all the presentations. So if you can go there and go there and go to the poll and then just give your rating, that would be super nice for us. So now, yes, for the audience, you just need to raise the hands and we will give you the floor. Anyone that would like to interact with the speakers today and make a question, don't be shy.
We also have questions on Slido, by the way, on the last part. So.
Okay, so yeah, okay, we will start taking some questions in Slido, and in the meantime, again, the audience is invited to make some questions. Just raise your hand, and we will give you the word to make your questions here. But now going into the questions in Slido, I will start with the most voted one, which is related to system adequacy, and this is for open to all the speakers, of course, the one that feel more capable to make a good response, go for it. So the question is the following: how do you view system adequacy from inertia point of view, given that the GFC technologies are not yet fully developed to replace synchronous inertia? Should inertia be procured through market mechanisms or as a result of regulatory requirements? And if so, who should bear the cost of the investment? Someone would like to comment about that?
I think we should address that question to Lawrence, if he's there. Are you
I'm
there?
here.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Okay.
To me, inertia and adequacy are different things. Adequacy is long-term investment. Inertia is short-term stability. So for me, it's actually an issue of ancillary services. It's not something I really investigated, but I don't see how it should be fundamentally different. I think the TSO can just set up tenders for contracting inertia and set the requirements and let the market bid. But it might be more expensive if you don't have rotating machines, but yeah, but fundamentally, I don't see how it would be different.
Well, can I just mention that there is also kind of regarding this inertia and stuff as to kind of how this cost should be allocated rather than demand, which is currently happening, that demand pays for everything, that some of these resources should have incentives to provide, to provide this inertia. That's something which is kind of in discussions. Anyway, yeah.
Would like to add to the response?
Well, I can add something. We didn't address a flexibility market, and that is something that has been spoke about recently, and we didn't address as such a flexibility market. Of course, when we look at the structure and the design of the actual markets, the mechanisms for the flexibility are already there. The balancing is already there. What is not there, and that is something that Goran was highlighting moments ago, what is not there, and it may be needed in the very near future, is the inertia itself, because it is a fundamental change of technology in terms of electrical energy generation, and we are moving from synchronous generator to virtual inertia systems based on power electronics. So in terms of the request for inertia, that now most markets are not paid, they are compulsory to be offered by the conventional technologies. I believe that we will need in the near future, I would say, near decades, to address the retribution of inertia and the trading of inertia as a service that needs to be provided by the participants in the market. TradeRES didn't address it specifically, but I would say that the next research project that studies what will be the future in this area will probably need to address the trading and the mechanisms to remunerate inertia.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, let's move to the next question. I think that is very interesting and this is open to all the speakers. What would you say are the next market design aspects that you did not address but that are worldwide studying?
Fernando, I didn't understand the question. Can you repeat it, please?
What would you say are the next market design aspects that we did not address in the project, but are worldwide studying in the future? And this is also related to the previous question. What would you say are these main topics out there?
I just said inertia markets or inertia trading, but I invite my colleagues to comment more on that.
I'm starting a project on this topic in the Netherlands. One is hydrogen markets. I think we need to consider hydrogen and electricity as interrelated markets, both in short term and long term. Long term, there's the adequacy question. How do you get enough electrolyzers, hydrogen storage, hydrogen power plants? A big one in Northern Europe is the market design for the North Sea, the offshore grid, and the price zones and congestion management in the North Sea, and allocating costs of the grid and allocating costs of vRES support schemes. I think in Europe in general, as we start to trade more renewables and we need support schemes, there'll be some kind of question of how to allocate the cost of these support schemes when you export power. So maybe we need to have a complete use guarantees of origin, but time-based guarantees of origin or something for that. Price zones is a big one. The bidding zone review, we didn't look at the grid, but it's becoming more urgent to have a more efficient way of congestion management. It's not fundamentally new, but the urgency is increasing. I think these are some of the big ones.
Okay.
And maybe I can just add, although one of the be a bit extreme, is that some of our analysis demonstrated that there is significant benefits of having a pro-European wide approach rather than member state-centric approach, and that's something which is also, should be addressed more strongly going forward.
Thank you. Any other idea?
Yeah, from our perspective, we've done a lot of research on the impact of CFDs on the market and of other support instruments, but we would really like to understand more about the complexity of parameterizing these instruments and how to assess more how we can design instruments that are easy to parameterize from a policy design view, and also easy to and do not create additional complexity for the users and create additional risks for the investors, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, actually, yeah, from the side of ISEP also, we are looking a lot into local markets at Imperial College, but the complementarity between the different market scales, I think that it's something that we have been studying, but there is still not a clear answer how to integrate this wholesale market and intraday markets and everything, and all the markets that already are in place, how they will be affected by these new local markets in a real environment. That is also something that needs further attention for sure.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I could possibly add to that although we somehow and Imperial's college case study highlight that fact, we connected local trading to retail markets. That connection in a very tight manner and dynamic manner needs to be further researched, because if the size and the dimension of local trading starts to affect the volumes of the national and regional markets, I do believe that we need different tools and a different approach to have the feedback of both the local markets in the national markets and vice versa.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, this linking the local district level objectives and the national objectives and management of that is a big area which needs to be addressed. Completely agree with Hannah. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I could point out something else that we started to do, but not in an optimal way. When in the short-term markets, we addressed a strategy of participation by the variable renewable stakeholders. And it was simulated in a simplified way. We just empirically selected what share of the energy forecasted should be traded in the day ahead or in the period ahead market, and what should be traded in the balancing markets, and the remaining would be in the intraday. that share and the distribution of shares, of course, should be optimized. And that is probably the next step that we are going to study and implement after the closure of this project, because it's our perception that if that division of shares among the different markets is optimized, the benefits and the revenues of the variable renewable stakeholders will be improved in a very visible and marked form.
Thank you very much. I think that we still have time for one last question, and actually this has a name. This João Esteves question. Actually, if he would like to take the floor, also he can take the floor to make the question. If not, I can make the question for him. So from João Esteves, in the case of the DLR in the cross-border interconnection, can you quantify the strong reduction in market splitting? Thank you. This should be for Christoph, I guess.
Nope. Should be for Antonio, I would say.
Yeah, I believe that is related to dynamic line rating and not our partner.
Not
Okay.
DLR.
Sorry, yes. Sorry, so
we have
I
two
don't know if
DLRs here.
yeah, that was
Christoph
my
want
mistake.
take. But I will. We didn't go too much detail, present too much details in the here today. But I will invite you to read our deliverable. But basically, from the results that we see today, we can see that, for instance, the S0 scenario, where we have in nearly 220 hours of market splitting. Hours, and when you look to S1 scenario, that is something that Fernando showed, that is quite similar in terms of energy mix for Portugal and Spain. We see that the number of market splitting hours is less than 20 hours. So, and in the case of S0 scenario, we are using the seasonal line rating of of cross-border power lines between Portugal and Spain, and in S1 to S4 scenarios we are using the dynamic line rating that was and the values were identified in a national project that was OptiGrid. So then we apply these values and see that indeed enables to strongly reduce the number of market splitting hours.
Thank you very much, Antonio. I think that with that we are over the time, so I will give the word to Professor Ana Stanqueiro for the closing of the webinar. And
okay, Fernando.
Thank you to everyone. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I would ask my colleagues to put their cameras on, so we are all present to close this final webinar of TradeRES project, and I thank to the remaining participants in the audience, from the audience by your presence, your interest and motivating questions, and I invite you to consult our site. You have that information in several of our presentations. And we will also share copies of these presentations in the project site. So feel free to consult and to contact us in case you are interested in further information. Thank you very much, and I wish you a good afternoon to you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank
you.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, colleagues. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.